Hello and welcome to the Matchbook Racing Review, where Don and I will reflect on what's been another informative week in the world of horse racing with regards to the key Epsom Classic trials. We're not too far away from those, inside the couple of weeks mark now, and we found out plenty more about that scene at York, amongst other racing as well and other divisions. Don, the other side of the screen, we're getting there, aren't we? We're learning more and more, and actually Breakfast with the Stars is taking place about the time we're doing this at Epsom, so more is being found out about telecasters' likely or unlikely participation as we speak.
Yeah, look, as you say, we are on that inexorable march towards Derby Day and Oaks Day as well, Coronation Cup Day. So yeah, look, it's a really good meeting at Epsom. It's funny that, I think we've spoken about this before. It comes up so early in the season now. Like it's all the talk is about the Derby. So many different strands. I think this year more than most. There's so many different strands. I know Aidan O'Brien is dominating the trials, but at the same time, there's still individual horses, and the fact that they're all in the one place, I suppose that gives Aidan O'Brien options, and we'll talk about that in a second, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's still fascinating to see what these horses are going to do and what they're going to achieve, and hopefully most of them or all of them will line up in the Derby, because it'd be great to see them all taking each other on.
Now, the interesting bit, before we analyse the Dante itself, Telecaster needs to be supplemented. Hughie Morrison, I believe, has been on the phone to everyone that's at Epsom at the moment and said he's going to make a very late decision because you've got a 16-day gap. That's his main concern, I think. And he's had 3 pretty quick races, and it's just a 16-day gap. Now, Authorised did it, I think, 16 days between Dante and the Derby. It's worth pointing out that New Approach, his sire, did, I think, 14 days between Irish Guineas and Derby, and his dam as well went on to finish second in the Oaks, having raced only 14 days previously in her respective trial, which I think came at Newbury. So on a breeding side, there's possibilities he'll do it, but I still get the feeling that Hughie's a bit concerned about that gap that he has to overcome, just the 16 days. But having said that, with the likes of Sir Dragonet now looking like he's going to go to France, please feel free to discuss that one, Don. It's not quite there for the taking, but it would be strange were he to win what on paper could have been the best trial and not run in a Derby.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that it's such a short gap, allied to the fact that he's had 3 races this year. Like it's unusual for a horse to be having his 4th run of the year in a Derby, isn't it? And that multiplied by the 16-day gap, yeah, you can understand his concerns. That said, he was a good winner of the Dante. It was a good trial. It looked like a strong race this year beforehand, for all that maybe Too Darn Hot had a rush preparation to get into it. And historically, the Dante is a very, very good trial for the Derby, as we know. So there are lots of reasons why he should run. And I suppose it's frustrating that they had him in it and then took him out. And now it's £85,000 to put him back into it. That'll be a killer. What was it?
A tough one to swallow, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, like 1,100 or 1,200 or something to leave him in it, which, it's easy to be wise in hindsight now. But, and the market's a very good guide. So the market is saying he's what is he, a 6 or 7 or an 8 to 1 shot or thereabouts, and that the market takes everything into account. Insofar as we have a midpoint in the market, and to have a Derby horse who could go and win a Derby has enough in his favour to give him a single figure price for the Derby, to not take that chance then to go and be a part of history. And also, in terms of financial, as a bet, it's not a bad bet given the prize money that's on offer in the Derby. So there are lots of reasons why you could go and run and just throw the dice, I think.
Look, he's a pretty much top price 9.0 shot on the match betting exchange at the moment. But of course, he's not guaranteed a run. And you say it takes everything into account. By the way, I threw all time span stats out the window when one of my favourite horses of all time, Don Purley, won an RSA, having not had a calendar start that year. So that just throws all that out the window.
Yeah.
I worry about those sorts of things. But look, it has to be a concern for him. But so Dragonet has now eased out to around about the 7.0 mark, having been nearly half that at one stage, because, as you say, it's taking it all into account. So just on that, it does look as though he won't run. And I spoke to Kieran Fallon yesterday, who made an interesting point about the horse, saying he's quite a heavy-topped horse who might want cut in the ground, and he really wouldn't have thought Epsom would be track, and that's not something I suppose given the speed he showed at the end of his race last time at Chess, that's not something I suppose I'd really opened up to, because I just thought he'd obviously be supplemented and go there, but it looks as though they'll swerve.
Yeah, that's very interesting that Kieran Fallon said that, and of course Kieran Fallon knows the type of horse that has excelled in a Derby, and also the type of horse that doesn't. So that's very interesting, and it is obviously it's a point that he's never run down a hill at the pace that he'll have to go at Epsom. That said, they don't tend to leave the ground too fast at Epsom on Derby Day, so that would definitely be in his favour. And yeah, look, it's a tough to say. It's a tough one to call now. Like Aidan O'Brien and the team, they have to make that decision because he isn't in either race, so he'd have to be supplemented to the Prix du Jockey Club as well. And that's a race he's never. I don't think they've ever won the Prix du Jockey Club. They went close with Highland Reel a couple of years ago, but I don't think they've ever won it. So that's an incentive to go there and try and win that. Dropping back to 10.5 furlongs from 1.5 miles, that would not be a positive. Given that his 2 runs, including his maiden win at Tipperary, is over 1.5 miles, his Chester Vaz win over 1.5 miles, and he saw it out well. But he has pace as well, so it's there are positives and negatives for going for both. But you would have thought that 1.5 miles at Epsom on definitely good ground, and if the ground was just good or on the easy side, that would be lovely for him. That would make the decision easier. But on good, kind of fast-ish, on the fast side of good ground, that maybe makes it trickier. And the fact that they have so many bullets to fire at the Derby as well, that gives them options in terms of going to the Prix du Jockey Club with a horse who isn't in either race. So yeah, Aidan O'Brien, he kind of threw the cat among the pigeons a bit at Naas on Sunday when he said the Prix du Jockey Club was an option.
I should also point out, because somebody might be watching this who was at Ed Chamberlain's Wellchild Golf Day on Monday, which was brilliant, and say Kieran Fallon said that to everyone over him, which he also did, and so I should point that out. And we also learned that Ollie Murphy hits the ball an illegally long way, and that Gary O'Brien is very accurate, because our very own Gary O'Brien won nearest the pin. So well done to you, sir.
Well done, Gary. Yeah,
more competition. So there you go. What on telecast if he does show up in a Derby? I left the Dante feeling, I suppose, a bit flat. No disrespect to Telecaster, but I wanted Too Darn Hot to stay unbeaten, and I suppose I wanted him to go on and as he's bred to do, run in a Derby. It clearly looked as though, I think almost the early part of the race caught Too Darn Hot out as much as the end did. It's a really long straight there. Telecaster is bred to be a Derby winner, if you like. He stayed every inch of that trip, and against a horse in Too Darn Hot who clearly struggled to settle early, even though they had a fair pace to chase, and therefore I think to finish his race out. So it makes sense they're going to come back in trip. For it's hard to argue that he didn't get 10. He may well, at this stage of his career, just be most effective over a mile. But he was clearly outstayed by Telecaster. And actually watching the race again, it's hard to find fault with Telecaster's performance.
Yeah, no, look, he did well to win it, Tom. But as you say, like Too Darn Hot, it kind of in the preamble to the Dante, it was billed as not a match, but the 2 big ones were Too Darn Hot and Japan. Japan was weak in the market. He'll probably come on a ton for the run. Too Darn Hot, given that he missed the Guineas, it was probably a rush to get him there, so he probably wasn't at his best. And it may have been as much a lack of race fitness or match practice that saw him weaken in the closing stages as it was the distance. I mean, it was interesting that John Gosling said directly afterwards the St James's Palace Stakes was where he was going next. So, you would have thought maybe 10 furlongs will be his trip this year, more than, well, as much as a mile, but it's who knows. I mean, he showed so much pace last year. The worry was always stepping up in trip, even though he's bred for it, if he would be as effective over middle distances. And it makes sense to drop him back to a mile for now, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him step up again to 10 furlongs at least later in the season.
Yeah, I can see him as I'd suggest that mile for now, but a Champion Stakes wouldn't be off his agenda necessarily. Just given what he's bred to do, and given he was buzzy, wasn't he, so early on, and on the way down you thought, I mean, in all honesty, I thought that this horse is just not going to settle over this trip, and he didn't settle perfectly, did he? So I think St James's Palace makes sense, and then we'll see what happens off the back of that. The other point, you mentioned Japan, just to make that point, that the vibes beforehand were really a case of he will come on a bundle for it, and actually the similar vibes about Anthony Van Dyke, who now is one of the leading charges from Alador for the Derby about his Lingfield run. And speaking to somebody affiliated with the team there, I hadn't really thought about where Aidan runs his horses in comparison to how ready they are. And I know that seems obvious in hindsight, but I've always thought he probably picks horses and says, that's a Chester horse, that's a Lingfield horse, we'll send that one to York, based upon what might suit them track-wise. But actually, I think this year it's been quite linear. What horse is ready for what? So your Circus Maximuses and your Sir Dragonets and your others were ready for the earlier ones at Chester. It was clear that Japan had to be kept back for as long as possible. And he might have run somewhere else had he been more ready, but he had a setback. And the same for Anthony van Dijk. I think he was just trying to find as much time as possible. Basically, the extra couple of days between the Chester run he could have had and Lingfield, which meant he was more ready for that. So I think that's exactly what's happened this year.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't be surprised. It's probably a mixture of both, Tom, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure there is an element of what track will suit what horse as a trial, and then there's the time. Like, I think Japan... I think he was in the Darren Stenstad Derby trial until final forfeits or final declarations. So that was maybe they were hoping to get him there. I think Aidan said afterwards or before the Darren Sten, they just give him a wee bit more time exactly and bring him to the Dante. But yeah, like he's a horse who's a bit under the radar now as well. Like, it wasn't a bad run for a horse who was as weak as he was in the market, and as you said, the vibes about him were that he would come on for the run. Like, he's the Beresford Stakes winner from last year, so that's obviously a good trial, and he was definitely during the winter. He was high on a lot of people's lists for a Derby, so remains an interesting horse. And Sir Dragonet, like his Tipperary maiden win was a very short space of time between that and the Chester Vase. So maybe Aidan thought that Chester would suit him, or he wanted to give him the kind of experience of Chester with a view to Epsom, because Chester, as we've mentioned before, it does mirror Epsom not in every way, but definitely in lots of ways. So it was quite a quick turnaround for Sir Dragonet to go from a maiden to a Chester Vase, and maybe as well, like as you said, that bringing the timing into it, maybe then that gives him a little bit longer between his trial and the Derby than he would have if he'd gone to the Dante.
Yeah, that's the other one to take into account, isn't it? The time after.
The other side, yeah.
I will leave it to Aidan.
He's best at it.
The one I think from what I've learned subsequently, Anthony van Dijk he'd be my favourite, if you like, and Broome is currently. So I think he's got he's absolutely bred for the trip, and I think he is expected to come on a serious amount off the back of that Lingfield run. The Musidora Donn was, I think we learned plenty. I think we learned that the winner was the paciest of the three that fought it out, Norsha. She probably got the best trip as well. Take nothing away from her. She was very good. But turning up in a note, I'm not even sure she will. Entitled took a full step in the final sort of 300 metres, furlong and a half. Been in Dubai too long. Can't like that. But she did, and I thought she still did well to finish as she did. I really like this Francolina, who absolutely fell out the stalls, and a lot of, and I see why, but a lot of people saying afterwards they've still finished in a bit of a heap. I'd be surprised if the Oaks winner came out of it, but she's about 20.0 Francolina. Now, again, the issue is she definitely going to run? We don't know. I get the impression from speaking to Maureen Haggis at York for Racing TV that the owner, who hasn't won an Oaks, would quite like to run her, and she may well go. But she'd have to take another step forward. But I'm a huge fan of this filly. I think the trip will be absolutely no problem. She'd need to break better. She came wide and she got going late, but she just shaped for a step up in trip. And I was more positive than a lot, I think, about Francolina's run. For all she'd have to sharpen up out the gates.
Yeah, I fully agree. She was the filly to take out of the Musidora for me. Not that it was original thinking. She did miss the break and she made ground. She'd probably be better over further. And I think she was in the Lingfield Oaks trial as well, and I think they took her out of that because of the ground. The ground they thought, I think, was just too soft for her that day. So bring her onto the Musidora, and it was only her second ever run or seasonal debut. So there's that potential to progress again. You know, she's very inexperienced filly, so you'd hope that with a bit more experience she might break a wee bit better and break on terms. And if she had broken on terms, you know, you don't know how races pan out, given, you know, she came from the rear, and that may not have been a negative on the day, especially like at York the whole week. A lot of them were coming from the back. So it probably wasn't a negative that she was coming from the rear, but maybe not to give her rivals a 3-lead start. But yeah, like she'll come on a ton for that. You kind of think that they might run her in the Oaks, wouldn't you? Because she's got a lot of the attributes. It was a good run in a good trial. She'll improve for the experience and for race fitness for seasonal debut, and she'll probably improve for stepping up in trip as well.
Yeah, and then but throw in, William Haggis has got Max Sad. I'm not sure whether she'll go for all in the top of the Oaks betting. I think she's the best of the fillies. I think she is.
I think he was a bit more positive about running her in the Oaks, wasn't he, during the week since we spoke last?
Yeah, he's hinted that may happen. I think connect the owners. The Sheikh Hamdan colours don't seem as though they're going to have anything else. I'd love them to roll those dice and run her. For all I think, she may be better at 10. Australia won a Derby; he was better at 10.
No, she's very exciting, and what she did in the Pretty Polly was phenomenally impressive. And even winning her maiden the time before that, I thought she did well to win her maiden. She stepped forward for that into the Pretty Polly. It's hard to say whether she stayed or didn't stay because she won so easily in the Pretty Polly. So, but yeah, look, you'd imagine the Sheikh Hamdan. I think Tagruda was his last Oaks winner, wasn't it? So yeah, you'd imagine he'd want to have her, give her a shot at it. No more than in the Derby, have a shot. There's, they say there's only one, and there's only one Epsom Derby, there's only one Epsom Oaks, and it's a big, high profile, prestige, obviously big prize money. So if you have a filly that has a really good chance of winning it, which she would have, then I'd be inclined to let her take her chance.
Yeah, and Tagruda won the Pretty Polly as well, the same race that Max had. So we'll see. I'm not sure. I think on Francolina, knowing William Haggis, he might be inclined to say, for all she's entitled to come on for it, it might come a bit too soon. He did the same with Sia Class last year, and he's got a great record in those two classics because he doesn't just chuck them in there. He makes sure they're right. So I think we'll see, but I think the owner might want to go there. I haven't spoken to either of those two men about it, so I'm probably guessing about this, but that's what I think at the moment. So there you go. The other thing we must talk about at York was Stradivarius winning the Matchbook Yorkshire Cup. Now, I got to stop trying to find any fault with this horse. And it wasn't as though I could find fault with him before the race, but I thought on paper it might be a stronger renewal of the race. And therefore, at the prices, I thought, well, goodness me, is he going to come out and be as good as ever this season? He was. He is rock solid in every respect. I think he could win a Group 1 over 1.5 miles. He's won one over 2.5 miles. This is a phenomenal horse. And, he's not all... He's lovely to look at, but there were some better-looking beasts walking around the paddock, Mildenberger being one of them, for the Matchbook Yorkshire Cup. John Gosden talks about this chestnut with the 4 white socks and how, he's not the biggest either, but my God, he was so impressive, and it's going to be difficult to oppose him for any race he runs in.
Yeah, I think that was the time, if he was going to get beaten, that was it on his debut, because he had a tough time last season. To go and win this, there's a reason why there's £1 million bonus for winning the Thayers Triple Crown as he did. It's a tough ask, and he did it. And then coming back after a break and coming back on the season and giving it, wasn't he? He was giving away a penalty this year as opposed to last year. He was receiving weight from one or two of his rivals. So, although he's proven at York, which is obviously a factor, and he wasn't that strong in the market either. So there were reasons why you could oppose him, but and I did, but I won't be doing that. Well, you think about these things deeply, and I just thought going into the race, because of the tough season he had last year, he probably wasn't at his best at the end of the season. There was a wee chance of coming back and asked to do it all again. There was a wee chance he just wouldn't be as good on his seasonal debut, giving away £3 as he was all throughout last season. But no, he was, and he beat a good horse in southern France, and the pair of them pulled nicely clear from Mildenberger. It was a really good performance. He's as good as ever, and could be another £1 million on the cards from this year, couldn't there?
Well, I mean, in the Gold Cup, it's going to be very difficult to beat. I'm just checking the price at the moment. I mean, you're looking at a 2.5 job, really. I mean, but look, cross counters the unknown quantity coming in there. I know Mark Johnson's come out and said DXB's the one, and he's about 11.0. But he's going to be so tough to stop because he possesses the stamina, he possesses the turn of foot, and Frankie was still easy on him late on. I thought there was a moment where he was worried he wasn't going to pick up, but I thought he was quite brilliant.
Yeah, and the Aidan O'Brien horses, they're going to mount a challenge as well, aren't they? Southern France, Kew Gardens, Capri.
I think there was a sense again he'd come on for that run.
Yeah. Like he was likely. I don't think he ran at 2. He's a likely raced horse. Capri, it's taken him a little while. He's had 2 runs now this year. It's probably a bit disappointing at the Savile Beg last time, but he's a talented horse. It's a Ledger winner, and if he could get back up to that mark, and the vibe seems to be that he's getting there. Kew Gardens as well. I know he was beaten in the Ormond Stakes. That was on soft ground. He was giving away weight. He's obviously another Ledger winner, a talented horse who he could be effective over 1.5 miles, as Southern France could. But they could also be very effective if they stepped up and trip and took in an Ascot Gold Cup or a Goodwood Cup or any of those cup races. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go.
And talking of bonuses in that division, Matchbook are partnered up with the EBF for the Matchbook EBF Future Stayers Series, which is all about 2-year-olds this year. They get a chance to run in one of 16 races, and if they win that and go on to win a Group 1 over 10 furlongs or more as a 3-year-old, they get £100,000 bonus. And Stradivarius, in his year, would have copped that bonus. So we're seeing massive injection into the staying program in the handicaps as well, and these Group 1s. So it's good to see the stayers getting the respect they deserve, and Stradivarius has flown that flag. Elsewhere at York, one other I want to pick up on was Good Vibes, David Evans' filly, who won the Mary Gate. She looks as though she'll go to the Queen Mary. She's round about the 13.0 mark for that. I'm not saying launching now, but David, after the race, said she was in season. She's the best filly I've ever trained. Now, he's trained some decent 2-year-old fillies, trained some decent juveniles, full stop. He said the best horse I've ever trained. I thought that was worth taking note of. And there will still be others ahead of her in the market on the day who hail from the bigger yards or the sexier profiles, if you like. I think a stiff 5 will really suit her, and I'm a huge fan of hers. So it'll be interesting to see how she gets on there. Anything else at York? We missed anything, Dom?
Probably. We probably missed loads. UAE Prince was good. There was one other. Dun, 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 dun.
Was it on the Friday? Was it previous to the week?
The sprint, Invincible Army. Like, he was very good as well, wasn't he, in winning the Duke of York? Like, very, very impressive.
Yeah, again, a horse who I hadn't given the respect to, I think, because he hadn't been seen since July when he came out and won at the start of the season. He was really good. And weirdly, his trainer came out afterwards and said, I worry about going to Ascot. I'm not sure it's his track. He won there last year. The race, do you remember in the Commonwealth Cup where a horse had water squirted at him and he played up before the stalls, and that was that horse. And I wonder if, he was playing up going down to the start. He's interesting for a Diamond Jubilee, depending on what else lines up.
Yeah, like it was the Pavilion Stakes that he won, wasn't it? Yeah, back in last year, at the start of last year. It seems like a long time ago now. But look, Ascot form, it's crucial as it is, as York form is crucial at York. And yeah, he was just so good. I mean, the fact that he has Ascot form, Ascot winning form, and the fact that he was so good, and that was okay. It was the second run of the year, but he probably improved from his last run at Doncaster to come on and win the Group 2 race of, the Duke of York Stakes. I know he'd beaten Major Jumbo before, and he beat him again. And Yafta maybe wasn't helped by the fact that he raced towards the far side on the day in the race, but no, like he was so good. He just came clear. You don't generally see sprints, high class sprints, won as easily as that. The way he came clear, and there's probably more to come from him. So yeah, he was really impressive.
He was very, very good. The Lockinge we need to talk about. What I loved was the international backlash against all of us lot, talking about our Group 1s over 1 mile to 10 furlongs, and how Winks would get chewed up and spit out where she'd have come over. And then everyone from the Southern Hemisphere went, Winks would have won that long. And you know what? He probably would. Now, that's not meaning to disrespect Moustachery, who has clearly stepped up. He came on 3 to 4, came on 4 to 5. He's now better 5 to 6. He's a Sir Michael Stout horse. Imagine if he kept him training to 11, he'd be a world beater. But, and Lawrence is a 5-time Group 1 winning filly, and she is brilliant and perennially underestimated. But it did, I think she blew up a touch actually on her first start of the season. It did have a feel as though it just lacked that star Group 1 miler quality which we want. We feel like we've got an open division this year. I thought Accidental Agent ran a good little race for a return to the Queen Anne and try and win that, where I think a stiffer mile will really suit him. He's around about 17.0 for that. I think that's about fair enough, to be honest. Thought he was a bigger price when he won it last year. But yeah, I left the Lockinge thinking, that's great. Another one for Sir Michael Stoute. I think that's 8 for him now. But it lacks a superstar in that division.
Yeah, like Mustachery, I suppose the fact that he's a 6-year-old and he's been around for a while, it kind of leaves you thinking, fair play to him for winning it, and that's a it's a Group 1 win. But for a horse who's going to improve from a Lockinge and go on and conquer the world over a mile, you would have. There were a few horses in there who had that kind of, like Lauren's was one. She's only 4, and as you said, she was brilliant last year against fillies. She disappointed on her only run against colts, but that was maybe at the end of a long season, so you can allow her that anyway. And she ran a big race on Saturday, just without being good enough. And Mustachery was good, he picked up well and he showed a really good turn of foot. And I didn't really watch him through the race. I was watching a few others, but watching it back, he travelled very well for Jim Crowley, didn't he? And then quickened. So it was the performance of a high class miler. I suppose in terms of taking a horse out of the race who might be under the radar, although maybe not so far under the radar, I thought Librevito was a bit unlucky. He kind of when Ryan Moore wanted to go forward, he didn't have a gap. He took him to the near side and he finished off his race well. So I think, going into the race, maybe there was a wee worry about whether he could stay a mile or not. Even though he was only beating a head or a short head in a French Guineas, he saw out his race well, as he had on his seasonal debut, his first run for Aidan O'Brien. So yeah, I wouldn't be giving up on him as a Queen Anne horse. He's got Ascot form. He won the Jersey Stakes. It was one of his best performances. He's very likely race, even though he's 5. He only ran once last year in the Aberdeen Stakes when he was with Andre Fab. He's only run once this year before Saturday. So there's probably more to come from him. And Aidan O'Brien has won the Queen Anne before with horses who were beaten in the Lockinge. So I'd keep Librevito still on my radar.
My only worry with him is he got so worked up or so warm before the race, and he saw it out really well. But and I take the point, he was a touch unlucky. But the early part of the race and before the race would mean that I'd first of all I'd want to probably see him just to make sure he wasn't as het up as he was on Lockinge Day. And he can just be a horse who's going to find trouble. But I do take the point, if you go back to his Jersey form, Andre Fab, and you put another furlong in there, given where he is in his career now, that could really suit him. He's round about the 10.0 mark for that. Lawrence, incidentally, is around about the 8.0 mark. Mustachery, a best price 7.0 with Matchbook for that. An Accidental Agent, who I mentioned, around about 17.0. So there's well, like we're saying, it lacks that standout, doesn't it? Would you back Librevito before it, or would you just want to sort of reset a bit closer to the time, maybe see him before the race?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you would, but he'd probably be a shorter price then. And and we don't know that he's definitely going for the race. You'd imagine that's his race now, though, given that he's a miler, and Aidan O'Brien trains him for Royal Ascot in lots of ways. They love to have winners at Royal Ascot, and he's got Ascot forms, Royal Ascot forms. So you'd think, yeah, that's definitely the race for him. Once he's come out of the race, okay, and everything's all right with him. And just to mention Romanize as well, he ran a big race. I think everybody in the world tipped him before Saturday's race, in fairness to Ken Condon. All right, really. Yeah. But look, you can see, like, it was a 20-1 shot going into the race, and Librevito was 4-1 or 9-2 the night before. And there was nothing between them at Naas. So, of course, he was overpriced, and that's all you can do is back horses that are a bigger price than they should be. And he ran a big race, and that was the second run of the year. He's still a relatively likely racehorse. He's an Irish Guineas winner, so yeah, he's one who ran a big race without being good enough on the day to win it.
One more to mention from Newbury. I think Headman is a really exciting horse who won the London Gold Cup. That tends to produce pattern company performers. And Roger Charlton's ridiculous. He's won it 4 times in 8 years, I think now. He's won it with the likes of Time Test, Alcazim. Now this horse Headman is a son of Kingman. The second was on the face of it, perhaps a touch unlucky, but actually I'm not sure it cost him the race. And Hedman still made an early move and swept wide under Jason Watson. He is a group company performer in the making, just in case anyone missed that. I'm sure they didn't, but I was very taken with that. And I was very disappointed with Solid Stone, who I still think is a really good horse, but he didn't seem to run his race.
Just on that's obviously a really good race, the London Gold Cup. It has a high profile, and to win it off top weight as he did, like that's stepping up to group class. And Time Test, you mentioned, with him, Roger Charlton won the race. He went on and won the Tercentenary Stakes, the Group 3 race at Royal Ascot. So maybe that's where Hedman will go. And just to mention Good Birthday as well, to finish third. He was drawn wide, as Hedman was. He had to make his ground on the far side, maybe not on the best of the ground, and just on a wing, which is never ideal. I thought he ran a big race to finish third as well. He obviously won't go up as much in the handicap as Hedman will, so he could be one for a handicap.
And finish up, Don, if you can, with the Irish angle of Naas on Sunday. Did anything make you go, that's worth keeping on side across any of the races there?
Yeah, everything really. It was a really good card. It was really good racing yesterday. Etoile, I suppose, is the standout. She made her season debut in the Group 3 race in the Coolmore Stud Fillies race, and she won it really well. She's by Warfront out of Gagnoa, who finished second behind Zarkava in a Prix de Diane. She finished third behind Moonstone and Irish Oak, so she'll probably get further than 6 furlongs. And to win a Group 3 race, and a good Group 3 race, like Peace Charter and So Wonderful set a high standard. They looked like two very good fillies when they met on their previous runs. So for Etoile to beat them like she did was really impressive. Alpha Centauri won this race 2 years ago before going on and finishing second in an Albany, and you'd imagine that the Albany Stakes at Royal Ascot would be the race for Etoile. So Perfect was very good, dropping back down in trip. She was only just beaten in the Fred Darling Stakes on her debut over 7 when she was again raced on the far side and was a wee bit away from the main action. She dropped back down in trip to 6 furlongs, which Aidan O'Brien said beforehand, that she had the pace for it, and she did. She was very good in winning that. You'd think the Commonwealth Cup would be the race for her at Royal. It was Royal Ascot Trials Day at Naas, there were genuine Royal Ascot pointers. So, I think Caravaggio won this race.
Just on that, because you have Pistoletto as well. You had Braden O'Brien. Just on his juveniles, it's different this year, isn't it? They have been readier. I'm sure they have in comparison to last year, where. Look, I know he was, 5s on Pistoletto, for example, that Son of Warfront, but they've been ready to roll straight up this year. Is that encouraging, do you think, going forward, or doesn't make a difference to what they're going to do in the future? They just seem to have been readier this year. Maybe they're just better this year, and they're still going to improve bundles for their runs. Yeah, no,
I think you might be right, Tom. I think Aidan said earlier in the season that he was able to get them on grass earlier this year because the winter was so mild. As we know, we had good to firm ground during the national season. I think he was able to get them out on grass earlier than is normally the case. So you're probably right. They probably are a wee bit further forward. Pistoletto did well to win. He had trouble at the start before, and I think he raced without his 2 hind shoes. And I know he was a 5s on shot, and he only just got home, but he had to battle to beat Red Epaulette, the horse, Michael Callan's horse, who won the first juvenile race of the turf flat season here. So he did well to win that, given that he didn't, before the race, he just had all types of, they took him out of the stalls and had to check him over before they allowed him run. So he did well to win.
What will he do? Will he step up, do you think, or will he stay over? Is he a Coventry horse?
You'd think the Coventry would be the race for him, all right. Or maybe the Norfolk, actually. Maybe the Norfolk over 5. And So Perfect, I think Aidan said afterwards that while you think the Commonwealth Cup is the race for her, he said that he might even drop her back down to 5 for the King's Stand, which is interesting. He won this race with Caravaggio a few years ago, and he went on and won the Commonwealth Cup. And he won it with Due Diligence as well, back a good few years ago. And there was no Commonwealth Cup then, and I think he finished second in the Diamond Jubilee. I think he ran in as a 3-year-old, so that was a big run. So it can be a good point at that Goff's Lacken Stakes. So it was a very good day at Naas yesterday, I thought.
Love the idea of a 3-year-old filly running in the King's Stand. Great stuff. Donn, thank you. Very good. We will be back again next week. We'll be looking ahead to the classics, which we've been looking ahead to for the last 6 months or so. But we'll finally get there, and that'll be our Epsom chat when we see you next week. Donn, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thanks, Tom. All the best.
Chat again soon. And to you at home, thanks very much for watching our Matchbook Racing review. Bye for now.